And welcome back to another week's installment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I am your host, Sean Meyers, joined by returning Justin Lowery. Justin, you have been sorely missed. Our schedules did not align a week ago. Welcome back to the show, and it's good to have you back, buddy. How have you been?
I've been amazing, pretty damn good. Can't complain.
This is the first time that we've convened on a Monday. And while we typically just pound out the Raw recap, SmackDown summary, and a third segment, sometimes trending topics, sometimes a pay-per-view preview or review, this week we weren't going to be able to get together later in the week. We figured pay-per-view took place last night. Let's not waste any time. It's fresh in our minds. So we're doing this special edition of trending topics. It's the HIAC review here on a Monday. So within 24 hours of when the show happened, what's your thoughts a day removed from the pay-per-view, Justin?
For the first 80% of the show, I thought it was very solid I would say good pay-per-view with the matches. And the last two matches, it went from like the Ronda Bliss match that I would just say was average. I didn't hate it or like it. It was just there. To a decent main event that I have many thoughts on, just to a crap garbage ending.
And so, yeah, but we're going to get into that first because you always have to start with the main event. But it wasn't like Roman and Braun were struggling out there. I mean, they were completely fine with what they were doing. You know, those guys aren't going to have a 5-star classic. It was fine. And then for some reason, the last 10 minutes of the show just became a complete sideshow. If WWE's so dead set on making Roman Reigns the focal point of everything, why did they make him the furthest thing from that with the way that this match finished up?
That's a great question. Actually, I was thinking the same thing myself. I guess it was to, quote-unquote, protect both guys, so neither took a pin. It was weird, and my issue with, personal opinion here, you had the guys climb the cage. That was the big moment of the match for me. I kind of actually forgot the match. What you're going to remember off that pay-per-view is the Lesnar running and the fighting on top of the cage and the big spot with Dolph and Seth. And two guys that weren't even involved in the match had the biggest spot of the match. Right. Which, to me, makes no sense. And at the same time, this now goes towards my dislike for the Roman situation. Is he's supposed to be the guy. He's not even the one doing the big spot. Dolph and Seth are the ones putting their bodies on the line. Great.
And they had already literally stolen the show. I mean, right. With the best match of the night, I think most people would say was that tag team match. So those guys had already put in work, and that was one of the longer tag team matches we have seen. It was probably 20 plus minutes, 25 minutes even. So those guys had done enough. I don't think they really needed to be out there at all. Nonetheless, before we get into the specific match breakdowns, I want to go over what was our former colleague Sean Saputo. Maybe he'll be back someday. We don't know. His favorite part was always making the predictions. And, I think I was a little better than you last time for SummerSlam. You started off the show pretty well, and then we basically, drew even. So let's take a look at the matches and what we had predicted would happen. And I unfortunately, Justin, was not able to get your explanation for some of your picks, and I simply was just speculating what you might have thought. I made a couple of these picks thinking that, maybe Samoa Joe and Becky Lynch would win, that they wouldn't actually win the title. So it's sort of hard to, when you're just seeing the name in the column there to completely explain. But let's see how these picks turned out. As you can see, I did not even address the Roman Strowman because it was a really no contest. So neither one of us were right nor wrong in that regard. We were both wrong about Samoa Joe, although at least, again, in my explanation, I did not think he would win the title. I simply thought he would win the match by some circumstance. And really, we'll get into that finish. It sort of left the door open for more to come. We both nailed Ronda Rousey. I had Becky Lynch. Although I will say that I really did not expect her to win the title. I thought she would win the match and continue the feud, maybe win the title at Evolution. You went with Charlotte. I went Jeff Hardy. You went Randy Orton. You were right on that one, pretty clear as day. And then we were both correct on Miz and Maurice, Drew, and Dolph, as well as The New Day. So very quickly, your thoughts on, was it predictable? Did you like the outcomes, even though I think we both went 5 of 7, and then, of course, there was the one that was the no contest. They didn't do a ton of swerves, I would say, but they had, at least some interesting outcomes that weren't that easy to see coming, I think, in some of the matches.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine with the outcomes. I think the show went about as I expected it to, except for like the main event. I wanted Becky to win. I didn't think she would. I was a little surprised. I was happy, but surprised because Charlotte again just kind of won the belt.
And, yeah, I think that was the biggest surprising outcome of the whole night.
Right. I just felt like eventually, especially with Becky playing the quote-unquote heel now, that she would chase a little bit longer. But to get to victory so quick, and then again, once again, Charlotte's up to 7 reigns. But how long does she keep another month or so reign? Like, That's a little ridiculous. I guess I read online the plan was to get, Becky over as a heel by the way she won the match, which again,
wow, I didn't see that.
No sense, because you could totally tell as the match went on, Becky was the favorite of the match. They celebrated her win. I mean, I think I tweeted this out last night that I didn't expect it, but I was hoping to see a double turn. I think this feud can really...
Well, there's still time left. There's still time left.
I think it would be very simple to pull off.
I will say there's only 2 outcomes that I thought were slam dunks. That was the New Day retaining and Ronda Rousey retaining. But both of those turned out to be the case. I thought everything else you could sort of make a case for it going either way. So let's, we've already touched on Roman and Braun, but let's kind of revisit that one. It was the main event, and again, it was the Money in the Bank cash-in. And this is something that I think is still up for debate, Justin, because there was rumors, and it truthfully made a lot of sense. We never saw it officially, come to fruition that it was cashed in, right? I mean, Strowman is working with another heel in Corbin. They could have done some funny business here if they wanted to get creative. This is sort of a lame ending for what a cash-in is, and it makes Raw less interesting now that the briefcase is gone. Roman had just become champion, so you didn't want to see him lose the title that way. Were they sort of in a no-win scenario, just putting these two together at this point in time before the match even took place? Was it already a no-win for the company?
Yes. I mean, when someone with the briefcase, that was probably the most lackluster cash-in, if you want to call it. I mean, he gave him notice like a face, but then he turned heel. I mean, the whole thing was just, you know my opinion on this, bonkers. I've said it on the show. Now I guess it's a way, now the briefcase is out of the picture and they don't have that hanging over their heads that at any point you can just, get a referee down and have a match.
Don't you want that each and every week on TV, at least that possibility?
But the way they're portraying the character, that goes against the character of him being sneaky and trying to do it. I mean, he's doing it like a way a face would do it, but then again, he's a heel. So it doesn't mash with the character, and I think that's the issue.
So they have this match. It's hard-hitting. It's what you would expect Roman and Strowman to be. They didn't really utilize the sell nearly as much as Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton, but I don't think anyone was going to top that in terms of their usage of different weapons and then the rules. However, it was perfectly fine for, 10, 12 minutes. Then you get Ziggler, you get Rollins, you get McIntyre, Ambrose. The fans love the action on top of the cage because they could sense something was coming. I personally, like you said, wasn't a fan of the spot that they had. One, it kind of looked bad because when the guys are at that angle, what did they do? Like a double punch or a double head smash or whatever? It just looks weird because they're kind of holding on, kind of positioning, and then they both fall through. And actually, they didn't even get to a replay. It was like one and done. Then they shifted back to Roman and Strowman, who had been sleeping in the ring. All of a sudden, McIntyre and Ambrose stay up there for the next 10 minutes. They're not seen from. They're just doing nothing. And then you focus back on the ring. And I had seen rumor, and I never try to read spoilers, but I saw Dave Meltzer earlier the day said that Brock Lesnar was there, was not confirmed he would have a role. So I wasn't completely surprised when Lesnar came out. If I had not read that, I would have been shocked because the consensus was this guy was gone for months, Justin. So why is Brock Lesnar getting involved with Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns this quickly again?
For once, I gotta say, I did not know he was there. I saw there was, news of a huge superstar backstage, and I purposely stayed away from it because I didn't want to know. So for once, you were spoiled and I wasn't.
Well, I will say I wasn't expecting it, but when I heard his music, it wasn't a complete shock because.
Well, because you knew he was backstage. I didn't even know he was backstage. So just to hear the music, I was like, "Whoa, what the hell's going on?" Because for me, I was legit shocked. I don't understand the point, and again, it just brings up more of my issues with the WWE right now, with the title scene and the Universal title, and how I think it's a joke. Okay, I guess it makes sense for him coming out, storyline wise. Okay, I get that, but why? Like, why do they got to keep going in circles?
Who wanted to see him come back? Maybe 15, 10% of the fan base?
I will say he did get a good reaction from the crowd. I mean, they were cheering. They seemed to be into it. Probably because most of them were surprised. People like to be surprised. So, okay, you have the surprise factor. And, I mean, no one really cares for the Roman. And I think, I'm souring on Strowman just because of the booking.
Right.
So, I mean, okay, screw the match. And apparently, there's video all over the internet. The crowd was chanting bullshit at the ending of the match as they went off the air.
How can you have... What did he basically gave the guys an F5? And it was like a pretty devastating spot because Roman got the F5 on Strowman, and it looked like Lesnar literally just said, I'm going to throw him and hope whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
That being said, like, with everything that we had seen earlier in the night with Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton, for that to end this match and for them to not let it continue, how do you justify that?
Well,
like that's
again, thank you for bringing that up. Like, it's a Hell in a Cell match, no DQ. How do you have a no contest in a Hell in a Cell match? It makes zero sense. Like you have to keep going until someone crawls on somebody for the pin. Like their own roles, they just didn't apply. But that's WWE for you. They make rules up and they do things as is convenient to them.
Absolute best. I mean, I guess the easiest thing they could have done if they wanted to take a kind of a cowardly way out, have the ref do a count of 10 for both guys where they couldn't get up at least. I mean that.
Or if you just, I guess you didn't want to have Strowman pinned, but if you want to keep a title on Roman, Strowman gets F5, then Roman gets F5
on him.
Strowman. He was laying on him. The ref could just be like, well, the match is going on. There's no DQ. That's a pin. 1, 2, 3, and have it that way. Then I think Strowman still.
What's the point of saying you can't have Strowman pinned? You don't want him losing cleanly, but that wouldn't have been a clean loss.
Right, exactly. The way they ended it, clearly they didn't want him pinned at all. But if you have him pinned that way, I don't think people are looking at it. Like, oh, Strowman's now weak. He was
losing the briefcase seemingly either way. So, right. I mean, it's not like he's going to get the briefcase back. They could make a rematch whether he lost by pinfall or that they did the no contest. Anyway, again, it took away from the two guys that I think rightfully are main event guys in Roman and Strowman. The match completely became a focal point of 4, 5, 6 other people. Mick Foley's involvement was baffling and completely unnecessary.
That was to promote his special after. That's all that was.
Right. So I went back actually today and watched my predictions from a week ago. You can check that out on our YouTube channel. And I specifically said it would be an overbooked match. I didn't even expect that much. I thought, yes, the tag teams would come out. Foley would maybe have a prominent role where he's trying to do something. But it just turned out, in my opinion, to really be unnecessary and really put a sour note on what was a great show to that point.
And again, I just want to reiterate, like, having Rollins and Ziggler, be the ones that took the main spot, not the guys in the match, that perturbed me because, we've talked how I think Rollins could be the face of the company and not Roman. You have him out there, giving you a great match, then have him out there main event, giving you the action, the spot, and yet Roman's still going to walk around with the title and doing all the major appearances. And that just, if I was Seth Rollins, I would, be a little ticked off.
Okay, agreed. We'll get to Seth Rollins and his match a little bit later. Let's focus on Samoa Joe, AJ Styles. And while we want to get into that match in particular, to me, I think it was clear as day that SmackDown's feuds were much better built heading into this show. It was only 8 total matches, and when you factor out the pre-show match, there were 7 on the main card. 4 from SmackDown, 3 from Raw. And it was very clear that the build for all 4 of those SmackDown matches was very significant. They had real good storylines, It gave people a reason to watch. I think that was sort of lacking on the Raw side. You could argue that AJ and Joe was maybe the best built over the past couple of weeks. I loved Samoa Joe reading the fairy tale or whatever you want to call it from the book. I thought that it didn't come across as corny. It worked for me. The match was, I think, very similar to the SummerSlam match, except we got an ending this time. The ending was a controversial one. I thought that they did it pretty well. Sometimes finishes like that sort of are tough for the wrestlers to actually pull off and make it look like it's supposed to. They did the job, although logic out the window there. If AJ's getting a pin, he couldn't have held out for another half a second thinking, come on. He could have held out until the pinfall concluded at least before he had to tap. But they set it up so that it would continue, and now they've already, I think, announced it for the Super Show in Melbourne, Australia, even though Samoa Joe said he wants it earlier. To me, third time, you're probably going to finally get a clear winner, but the match itself before that I thought was outstanding again. And these guys, hard-hitting, they continue to deliver way more than AJ and Nakamura ever did.
Oh, no, I agree. This feud has been awesome. I've enjoyed their matches. I've enjoyed the feud. I do think it's time for AJ to drop the belt. I mean, we kind of talked about Lesnar and Roman being the focal point. Well, I mean, Styles has held the belt for a very, very long time. And I think he's also running out of opponents if you look at the SmackDown brand. So, that's why I picked Joe. I think it's just time for Joe to, finally win the belt. The finish was what it was. It was clearly the make sure that there is a third match. I hate that the third match is taking place in that Super Show.
Well, here's the thing. If it's booked like the Saudi Arabia show that everyone saw as a glorified house show, that's not the time to have it. If they make this like a big-time pay-per-view where, maybe a world title does change hands, then, yeah, those guys can go and have a great match, but it's not going to have the same feel if it comes across like another big house show. I agree with you.
And then, too, I don't know if I'll end up watching it.
Did they announce what time it's going to air?
I think it's like 5 or 4 a.m. I mean, like our time,
Right, because there's a pretty significant difference.
Right. It's like going to be in the middle of the night if you want to watch it live. And by the time you get up, I mean, the results are going to be posted everywhere. So it's like whatever.
Anything that really stood out about the match to you other than the finish? I mean, I know you said it was a good match. Where would you rank it as, definitely like a 4-star caliber, or do you think it was a little below?
I'll go around 4, 3.5 to 4. It was definitely very solid, one of the better ones of the night, and anything above a 3 is a very solid match in my opinion. And this, they're telling a story. I mean, everything's working right now. The crowd was into it, and for me, I wish, that feud to me is more of a main event feud than what we're getting with Roman and Strowman. And, that's the title. It's supposed to be the WWE title, and yet it's in the middle of the card, which I didn't like the positioning of it, but, that's, again, my personal opinion.
I thought the SummerSlam match had, like the mic drop moment with Samoa Joe actually calling out the wife right there. That was a little better then, and that got a better reaction from the crowd. But I thought Joe's physicality, it looked like, I'm sure he was safe to an extent, but it looked like he was trying to hurt AJ, and AJ actually got busted open. I don't know if it was his nose or his mouth. So it was very hard-hitting without being seemingly unnecessarily dangerous. It was just an old-fashioned, like, I'm going to punch this guy in the face or mouth. I'm not going to drop him on his head 10 times necessarily, but it was a throwback physicality, and I think that works for Samoa Joe.
Well, yeah, and I think, too, you're seeing guys that have worked with each other many times throughout the years. I mean, since Ring of Honor, TNA, they've had many matches, and I think you can see that they work very well together.
Let's move on to the women's matches. We'll begin with the Raw one, and I know you said this was an average match between Ronda and Alexa. My biggest issue, I have 2 of them with this match. I thought the match was perfectly fine. I mean, it was an average to slightly above average women's match here in 2018. The 2 issues I had with it, one, how do you have this just about a month after it was a complete squash at SummerSlam? Like, it goes back to why did they need to have that at SummerSlam where Alexa was a joke? Because it's a little bit harder to believe this the second time around. You can't go from not even being able to apply a headlock or whatever to Ronda a month ago to now working her over for the better part of 12 or 15 minutes. The second thing is, I'm assuming you saw the segment that they had on Raw leading up to this, right?
Yeah.
Did you get the impression that it was a very significant rib injury to Ronda on Raw? Because I remember, she got thrown into the barricade or whatever. She came right back in, cleaned house, threw out Alexa. She was holding it a little bit, but I mean, it wasn't wrapped. The fact that they spent almost the entire match with the announcers doing a good job putting it over, but talking and focusing on the rib injury, I never got the feeling that that was a significant part of this until they decided to make it one last night. It did not come across on Raw like Ronda had been significantly weakened, which is the image they were portraying last night.
Not at all, nor during the week. They didn't put out on Twitter stuff, anything like, how they do storyline injury, updates and stuff. There was nothing leading up to make us think, okay, that this is going to be an angle played throughout the match. And I, like you, I tweeted out during the show, I was shocked by all the offense Bliss was getting. I
thought she looked great, honestly. Like, that was one of the...
I was just shocked because I didn't expect that. Like, as you said, we saw at SummerSlam how that match went. So I was just shocked by the extent of the offense because we all knew the outcome.
Is it a good sign that Ronda, not even in terms of her actual ability, but the fact how it was booked, can have competitive matches with people like Alexa Bliss, or is it too far from believable for you to work?
I think you want it to work. I can kind of believe it. Like, of course she's, a UFC fighter, but you could kind of try to use the logic but she's like a rookie in the wrestling ring.
Yeah, she has to make mistakes, or the bad guys have to cheat, or something like that.
So you could throw that in there because logically, okay, she's great at this, but this is a completely different sport, so she has lessons to learn. But I would assume though, like after she learns them though, she's going to be a dominant force. But you can't book her like Brock Lesnar because she shows up every week and she competes in more matches.
And if you book her like Lesnar, then there's not going to be any good. I mean, we've already seen her against Nia, but like other than maybe Asuka or Charlotte, none of the other matches would even be competitive.
Right, there would be no drama. So what's the point of really being invested in her matches? So that's why you kind of have to book her, where she can be taken advantage of.
She's like a slightly stronger version of Asuka, sort of, is how they're maybe presenting her. Is that
okay? Yeah.
In which, like, I could buy that, right? I mean, Asuka typically, she would get her squash matches, but she would have competitive matches against
takeovers and stuff during her undefeated streak. I mean, that's what I thought they were going to build up to, was her versus Asuka. But things change.
So they both move on. That's the end of this for the time being, I hope, right? AB goes to Trish.
So I think, tonight maybe we'll start seeing a push for the Women's Evolution pay-per-view because we're about a month out now, and, the rumor is her and Nikki. So at some point...
Well, they're going to be teaming together in Australia. I would guess that's where they'll do the divide on that. I'm not looking forward to that. I think that's the wrong decision. A match that everyone was looking forward to was the other women's match, and I know we talked about this a little bit, Justin. You're very happy that you were wrong with your prediction. Becky Lynch wins the title from Charlotte. What was the actual pin? Was it a inside package off of the spear, or was it like a DDT? Because I was confused and they never showed a replay. So I'm wondering if it was...
Thank you. Okay, I'm not the only one. It happened so fast.
It didn't look bad. It was just confusing, and I wondered when they didn't show a replay if maybe it wasn't exactly how they had planned it to work out.
Because then I was actually a little surprised that was the pin. Like, I wasn't ready for that to be the pin in the match. I sat there and I'm like, what? I was like, whoa, and it happened. And like you, I'm like, okay, I want to see that again, and we never got it again. So, and I haven't seen anything online. So I'm with you. I would like to see that. Maybe, on Tuesday we'll get a look at that. But for me, I enjoyed the match. I thought it was a good match between the two. I'm happy Becky won. The crowd was into it.
Good exchange afterwards too, I thought, right?
Yeah, Becky's clearly the face, but she needs to keep the same attitude. People are really digging, the tougher, edgier Becky. And they just want to boo, Charlotte. I think eventually people do get sick and tired of this people winning all the time. Cena, and like we've said on here, I picked her to win because I view her the female Roman Reigns.
Again, I didn't want to speak for you when I, indicated that you did pick Charlotte. I'm assuming you didn't think Charlotte would win cleanly, and that would bring an end to it, because we both thought this was going to continue up to Evolution.
I would think the end would be Evolution pay-per-view. I'm assuming that this is what we're going to get, is the third match between them.
And if Becky loses that, what would your reaction be?
Well, I saw a thing online, and it got me to think that they were like, I could see Becky winning the title tonight and then losing it right again in Evolution. So Charlotte, it would be like her 8th title reign for the women's title, and that would make her the most all time. I think maybe Trish is 7, and that would give her the most reigns. And on the historic women's pay-per-view, Charlotte, her dad was 16 times, Charlotte's now 8 times. That they can easily see the WWE doing something like that.
Whoop-de-doo. That wouldn't mean anything to me.
No, but they have set a precedent with Sasha Banks would win the title, drop it back a month later, and
Sasha suffered as a result of it.
Yes,
there's
absolutely.
no doubt.
I hope not, but if they would do that, I would be really upset.
You said you liked it. We both agree the finish wasn't, it was a clean finish in a sense, but it wasn't a decisive finish. Was this about as good as these women can have, or do you expect them to be better the third time around?
I think they could be better, and that's great to say that, with women's wrestling in 2018.
Yeah, I thought it was a very good match.
Yeah, so a lot, but I think there's still more in there. And,
right.
Maybe knowing that there's going to be a third match, you're saving a little bit more, because each match you want it to be better than the last. You don't want to go.
What's Becky Lynch's best match ever in this company?
One-on-one probably. I would assume so. There was that fatal 4-way.
So two matches jump out for me. Her triple threat at WrestleMania, the first time that they really made the women's evolution, whatever you want to call it, significant. It was her, Charlotte, and Sasha. But to me, her best match ever was one-on-one with Sasha in NXT, and I've always had that as the bar for her.
Yeah.
I think she could potentially reach or top that if her and Charlotte get the 20 minutes clean finish at Evolution.
Yeah, no, I agree.
A match that I tell you what, it exceeded expectations and set a new level of brutality in 2018. Justin, you're a person who likes violence. You're sort of a sick dude in a sense. Your reaction while you were watching Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton's match unfold?
Enjoyable. I don't really enjoy Randy Orton's matches too much, but I enjoyed that one, probably because of the violence. The screwdriver to the ear, as I watched it, I went, oh, and that's a good thing. When I could do that's pretty awesome. And I mean, anyone who knows people with cage ears, you can really do a lot of things. I mean, it wasn't hurting. It might have been a little uncomfortable, but I mean, it's not a real big issue for Jeff whatsoever.
So my concern is I don't know enough about that. Is there a legitimate chance doing something like that? It literally detaches the part of the earlobe? Because I mean, if I'm Randy Orton, I'm thinking I don't know about. I don't want to have my hands on something that.
You yank hard enough, if you want to really pull it. But I mean, I'm sure Jeff, you could twist and do things with it, and he twisted it up. And if you notice when he pulls, he does pull it, but he doesn't overextend it. That's where the selling, they're making it look like it's being pulled more than it actually is.
Did you turn away?
No, but I did squinch. I didn't turn away, but I did what? Ooh.
Yeah, I was watching with my dad, and we both were just silent for about the next 30 seconds after that. That was the thing that probably people were going to remember the most. But and by the way, I don't think I've showed the picture of it yet. Now, this isn't actually the actual turning of it, but it's Orton just holding the screwdriver in his hand, which in itself already, I think people knew what was coming. I certainly knew what was coming. You just, it was one of those things, even though you knew it was going to be ugly, I think people kind of wanted to see it. The fact that they used that belt, man, that belt just ripped into both guys, didn't it? I mean, yeah. Orton's back was a mess, and there was part of his skin on his leg coming off. I have no idea how that happened. Jeff Hardy was bleeding on his shoulder. it was absolutely brutal. Not just that one spot, not just a finishing spot. For a solid 25 minutes, these guys were really taking it to a new level in the PG era.
Yeah, for me, it was nice to see. It reminded me of a little, the hardcore days a little bit. Both guys went hard at each other. It was what you would think a Hell in a Cell match should be. There should be a little bit of blood. There should be a lot of bruises and marks on the guys' bodies. That's the whole concept of the Hell in a Cell. And I knew Jeff was going to do at some point a crazy spot. I mean, that's Jeff Hardy's MO. And him coming back to WWE, he said the one match he always wanted to do was a Hell in a Cell that he's never got to do in his career. So you knew he was going to do something never before seen and pretty ballsy and crazy. And that he did.
Any issue with how it finished? I mean, obviously Orton moving about a second or two prematurely kind of took away from it. Then they sort of teased like the ref had to stop it, which, again, it sort of was weird. Like, just have Orton...
They're trying to get it like he's really hurt.
Right, blah, blah, blah. I know. But
I think fans are smart enough to know when a wrestler's really hurt, what goes down and when it's...
And the thing, completely serious, even if he is really hurt, if it's just a pin on top of that, I think they would do that. I mean, Stone Cold Steve Austin had a broken neck, and he got a roll-up pin. If you're not taking a beating, if it's literally just a pin, I think...
I would assume if he was really hurt, you wouldn't have hooked the leg and pushed up, because if it was really a neck or back thing, you might just kind of lay on him gently, 1, 2, 3, don't move anything, and leave just in case there is a serious injury there. But the way he pinned him, if anyone thought there was legit, it took the question right out the window.
Let's move on. And this match, you and I had talked a lot about, so we don't have to spend a lot of time on Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella against The Miz and Maurice. There's no doubt in my mind the addition of the women to this match made it what should have been a great to at least very good match to a average to possibly below average match. And I'm not saying that they were, botching stuff or looked completely out of place, but it certainly took a lot away from the guys in this one. I understand why you include the wives in the storyline. I just don't think you needed to include them in this match. Your thoughts on Daniel Bryan and Brie Bella against The Miz and Maurice, which ultimately ended with Maurice getting the roll-up, very ugly-looking roll-up on Brie Bella.
I was really looking forward to this feud of Bryan and The Miz, and now it's been completely killed for me. Like, all the excitement I had for it is gone.
The SummerSlam match was good enough, right? I mean, it was probably slightly below what we expected.
I just don't care anymore. Mainly because my hatred for the Bellas is legendary. So anything she's involved with, I hate. It makes me hate Daniel Bryan because she's associated. I can't. The music, the way she points, her yeses, her facial expressions, I can't stand it all. And I actually love The Miz and Maurice. I actually think they're personal.
The matching sunglasses killed me.
I think they're a fun couple. They're funny. I know I wasn't on the show to do predictions, but I think I texted you. I expected Brie to get pinned, which was the outcome, because in this way you can get another match out of Miz and Daniel Bryan.
Do you go back to one-on-one?
Right.
Is that so? You think that's where they do move back to the one-on-one?
I would think so. You have to, right? You can't do another, mixed tag match. The women's Evolution pay-per-view is coming up. Have Maurice versus Brie one-on-one if you want to continue that.
Right.
There you go.
Right. I agree with you. Hopefully, The Miz and Daniel Bryan get another moment to shine. Those guys deserve it with this feud, but last night they were, I think, one of the low spots. I would say probably the second worst match on the card, truthfully, behind the main event. A match that maybe was the best of the entire night. Certainly the last 5 minutes, I thought, put it over the top, was the Raw Tag Team title match. Drew and Dolph against Seth and Dean. This one, Justin, it was a case of perfect WWE-style wrestling where they weren't necessarily doing false finishes using the finishing maneuvers, but they were hitting high-impact stuff that the guys just barely kicked out of. And then I thought the ending to this one was absolute genius, with Rollins going for that, the Falcon Arrow tandem move. Drew hits the Claymore, Dolph falls right on top of him. As bad as the finishes were, or confusing as the finishes were for some of the matches, again, Becky and Charlotte was sort of like, it wasn't bad, but it was sort of confusing. The main event finish was just a train wreck. Maurice winning, that wasn't ugly, or that was pretty ugly. This was an incredible finish. I thought the last 5 minutes made it from a good match to a match of the night candidate.
Yeah, for me that was the best match. Like you said, the last maybe 8 minutes was this awesome, insane wrestling. Tag team wrestling at its best.
Even though these really aren't two true tag teams in a sense.
Right, but those guys, they brought it, and I tweeted out after, I love the ending. I thought it was a cool sequence. I thought it was original, which you don't get that very often anymore, and I loved it. I loved everything about it. The false finishes, I like that stuff anyway.
But you get what I'm saying. So one of the false finishes was Seth hitting a frog splash on the back of McIntyre. It's not his finisher, so you're not really decreasing the value of his finisher. The zigzag is only a pseudo finisher for Dolph anyway. He doesn't win with that very often.
But like the frog splash it's a move that people have seen used as finishers before. It's a high impact.
Right. That's why I think it was so well done.
It could cause a pin.
It wasn't 5 curb stomps that they kicked out of or dirty deeds or
Yeah.
What do you expect going forward for guys like Ziggler, McIntyre, Rollins, and Ambrose after the performance they put on and the fact that they were out there again prominent in the main event?
Good question. I mean, does this feud continue?
We know that it's a 3-on-3 match already booked for Australia, the Shield against whatever the Dogs of whatever awful name they are.
Another 3 weeks of that, whatever. Is it 3 weeks away now? And then maybe after that they'll go their separate ways. Because remember, Rollins is still the IC champ. At some point he needs to have a feud with the belt again. Other than Ziggler. I mean, somebody else has to jump in there now, right?
I don't know. I mean, yeah, in a sense you would think so, but I think that title and the tag team titles are sort of secondary to the fact that these guys are playing their part in the main event feud between Strowman and Roman, and possibly now Brock involved as well. Final thing we want to touch on, the pre-show match. Admittedly, I didn't get a chance to see it. I was running late. But it sort of played out exactly how you and I thought it would. New Day retaining the titles against Rusev Day, because while I'm sure these guys put on a great match, and I will check it out at some point, the biggest takeaway was the dissension being teased between Rusev and Aiden English. This one was awfully easy to predict. Makes sense going forward, right? I mean, this is sort of where they had to go with this match.
Yeah, I mean, no surprise there. Like you, I didn't see the match either. I turned it on right at 7. From all reports, it was what we thought it was going to be. It makes sense.
Disappointing that it wasn't on the main card for you?
I mean, there wasn't that many matches. Did you really need a pre-show match? I mean, you probably could have...
I thought they were going to add something like Day Of to be the pre-show match.
You would have taken away time from, maybe the tag team match, and that would have sucked. So maybe everything probably did work out for the best there.
New Day continue to have the tag team titles. We're going to probably get a new challenger. It's going to be the Bar upcoming. Do you care?
No. I mean, but they're going to put on great matches. It's just the same old, same old. We've just seen it so much. Nothing's fresh in that regard.
Fair enough, and that's sort of the challenge when you don't have a ton of tag teams that are well established. Let's wrap this one up, Justin, with your final thoughts. Give me the best match. Give me your grade overall for this show.
Best match, I'm going with, Ziggler and Drew versus the Shield there, Rollins and Ambrose. Overall, I'm going to give the show a B. I probably would have gave it an A until the final 2 matches. And even with the women's title match, with Ronda, it probably still could have been an A if the main event delivered. But the main event really took a lot out of it for me, so I'm going to go B-.
You know what? I agree with the best match, although I think the one that we're going to remember is Jeff Hardy and Randy Orton. And I think if it's the most memorable months or years later, then you can always argue maybe that's the best match. But as far as in-ring performance, yeah, I'd give it to the Raw Tag Team title contest. As for a grade, I think it's one of the best of the year, but it's going to be overshadowed by just the ridiculous ending where you had Brock Lesnar, Paul Heyman, Mick Foley, Drew, Dolph, Dean, Seth, and no finish. And that's just, people are going to remember a complete train wreck of a main event ending that's going to take away from great action up to that. I still will give it probably a B+, but, I think it could have really been the best pay-per-view of the year had it been a great main event. And that's saying something because I think the build was one of the worst of the entire year. So this is proof that despite the poor writing, you should still watch WWE pay-per-views because the talent itself will go out there and put on a great show more times than not.
Right. The talent's there. They don't always use it right. That's my major complaint, but the talent's definitely there.
That's going to do it for this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. Again, this was the review of the HIAC pay-per-view. I'll be back solo in all likelihood later this week to do the Raw recap and the SmackDown summary. Again, you could follow us on Twitter, our handle 5-Star Pod Wrestle. You could follow our individual Twitter accounts that we will have used throughout the week. And of course, check out our YouTube channel, like it, and go back and watch all our old videos that date back to March. But that's going to do it for week number 26 of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. For Justin Lowery, Sean Meyers signing off. We'll see you later this week on another installment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.